Welcome to another micro lesson for microbats. It's important to realize where and how you position your detectors is important and will influence both the species you will detect or record, but also the quality of your data. Sound does not penetrate dense vegetation. If you're down in this area and you're recording, you can record these understory species. If there are bats above the canopy, you're not going to record them because the sound won't penetrate. Remember, this does not mean they're not up there. So if you're doing a survey and trying to document, quote, all the bats in the area, be aware of how your detector is placed. If you have gaps in the canopy, you will be able to record species flying up above as they go over. And of course, along edges, you'll be able to record high-flying bats, the understory species, and everything flying around down there. Placement is important, and under shrubs or bushes sometimes seems it's a real good place. You want to hide them so people don't steal them or mess with them, so you can record the bats flying around. However, in some cases, depending on where you place them, if it's in dense vegetation or a shrub, insect sounds in the near area will overwhelm and literally drown out the recordings. So it'll overwhelm your microphone, and mostly what you'll get is noise, and you may still pick up some fragments of bat calls, but this is going to pretty much kill you. In Belize, that was one of the issues during the seasonal cicadas coming out. Fortunately, after about 7:30 in the evening, they quieted down and were done with their chorus for the evening, and I could continue recording bats. Here's some examples from archive files. Some of these are actually from iNaturalist, where we have people who are not bat biologists that have some bat equipment that they bought. They turn it on and walk away, and what we have is mainly noise. Another full spectrum view with the different software that they're using. Here's another one. You see all this low frequency noise here, and it's so loud, in fact, that you get the multiple harmonics going all the way up. And if you weren't aware of this, you might see some of these little fragments and go, oh, those are probably bat calls. But you can actually see the loudest parts of them are down here, and then they're amplified. Let's look at some full spectrum. Noise files like this, pretty much narrow banded, pretty clear that that's noise, but you can get other noise that looks like this. It's pretty broadband, and you see it shifting in frequencies. Telltale sign of insect sounds, you get these fuzzy looking pulses, but they're going from a high frequency to a low frequency with some regularity. Could be a cricket, a cicada, anything that's stridulating with some sort of regular pattern. Some of the insect sounds actually may look like bat calls if you're not experienced and don't know what you're looking at, but they're very short, very regular. And here's a lower frequency. And again, insect sounds, not bat calls, but just be aware of what we're looking at. The quality of calls recorded depends a lot on where you put your equipment. For an example, I'll use the mustache bat. now a species complex ranging from Central America all the way down into South America with multiple species. But their calls are all pretty much the same, just different frequencies. Let's say we have mustache bats flying in an open area here, and our detector is placed over here. You're going to get some nice clean calls here. The same bat or another bat of the same species is flying up here. The sound isn't going to penetrate the vegetation completely. It will, quote, leak through the gaps in the branches, and you'll get recordings. If you've got your solid recording in open air, very unmistakable call shape, long constant frequency. Here we actually have two bats. There's fragments of overlapping pulses there, but very diagnostic. You know that's a mustache bat. However, the one recorded up above in higher areas, the recording is broken. Again, only parts of the sound are coming down to the detector. Other parts are completely masked because it doesn't penetrate the vegetation. So if we look at the quality of your calls from A to B, this you can identify readily. This may cause you some problems. Is the detector close to objects? Are the bats close to objects? Many of the sounds you recorded may be reflected and you'll record echoes. If we have bats over a pond or a stream, if they're high enough, you're going to get a nice solid call. If they're closer to the water surface, which is reflected like a solid surface, you'll record the main call, and then you're going to record the echo where the sound bounces off the water. So, what are echoes looking like on a vespertilianid? Well, all these second pulses are the echoes, and they're following very close. The bat calls are traveling at the speed of sound, the same speed, but they're a little bit delayed because it's traveling a little bit longer, bouncing the sound off the water. So you get these secondary pulses. This is not what the bat's doing. It's not immediately emitting double pulses. These are echoes. Here's another species readily identified. It's a mollossid in the genus Molossus, a very common group throughout the neotropics. Diagnostic pulses are paired, a high followed by a low, high by a low, and you recognize the pattern quite nicely. However, if we've got a molossid flying over the water, again, you've got the primary pulses, but then you have the reflected pulses, the echoes that are following. And if you're not aware of that, you'll see these calls very close together and in pairs like this. Oh, the bat's emitting two very quick pulses, then another two very quick pulses. No, if you measure those, actually the distance between them or the time between them, you'll find the bat probably is not going to be able to echolocate that fast. But you do see the diagnostic pulses, but they're just doubled. That actually even, excuse me, carries through to the feeding buzz pulses. And you can see echoes up in here in the approach phase. So those are what we call specular echoes. They're reflecting from surfaces mostly solid. So are the bats flying close to objects as well? So we've got bats in an understory. And this is another vespertilianid, and immediately from what you've just seen, you'll start recognizing there's echoes stuck in here, little trailing pulses. Sometimes the echoes will actually be a full pulse length, but these are specular echoes. Now, the other type of echoes you see, bats flying in the understory or close to objects, you're going to record the primary call or the main part of the call directly. But what we're seeing next are diffuse echoes. And diffuse echoes are echoes bouncing off all the surrounding surfaces. So the sound is coming out, bouncing off the ground, off the edges of the shrubbery, off the branches of the trees, and you're getting all these different echoes coming in. So what does that look like when you're recording? Diffuse echoes, all of this stuff down here. These are diffuse echoes from the sound bouncing off multiple surfaces at the time you're recording. So just be aware of your detector placement and the surrounding areas. With experience, you'll be able to recognize that these issues are not, quote, plasticity of bat calls. The bats have not changed what they're doing. This has to do with physics of sound. With experience, you'll also be able to position your detectors to avoid as much degradation of sound as possible. Make sure that they're aiming into a fairly open area. I've seen many times where people in forested areas, especially in the tropics, they'll clear a small area, almost like a tunnel in front of the detector. And as long as bats are flying pretty much straight out front, you're going to get nice, clean recordings. If they're anywhere outside the edge of the cone of reception, we're going to see, like we saw with the mustache bat, just fragmented calls as the sound penetrates the vegetation. And the last thing to be aware of is your gain or microphone sensitivity. If it's set too high, look at all the sound here that's measuring the amplitude. Very, very loud. The gain is set too high and it pretty much overdrives the microphone and distorts all the recordings. So there's your micro lesson on placement. Be aware of how you place it. Be aware of looking at your calls and recognizing echoes. And in the future, if you're getting a lot of distorted calls, reduce the gain a bit, sensitivity, and also make sure your placement is not buried within a vegetation area that's going to distort the signals.